Hello, welcome to Yin. Thank you for joining. It's my favorite time of the week. Feel like we could all use more recovery in our bodies, our minds, our spirits. So let's start today on hands and knees. Tabletop. So as you come to hands and knees, stack the shoulders over the wrists, hips over the knees. And we'll just start with some slow movement, cat cow. So on the inhale, reach the heart forward, lift the tail. On the exhale, round the whole spine, chin comes in toward the chest. Now you keep going at your own place, at your own pace. So inhaling as long as you can, making that movement as long as you can, and exhaling, doing the same thing. Match the length of the inhale with your exhale. Keep going on your own. Maybe the eyes are open or closed. Maybe you add movement. Maybe you stay in one spot and just breathe. That's fine too. Just starting to wake up the spine. If it's already awake, just seeing how it's feeling, checking in. How often do we do that? Maybe send some extra love and gratitude for everywhere it's taking you in your life. One more cycle, forward and back. You'll come back to tabletop. So you could keep the hands on the mat. If you want to easier transition, bring the hands up on blocks. It's up to you. And if you don't have blocks, it's not a big deal. If you have blocks, bring them up to the tallest height. You'll walk the blocks and the hands over to the right a little bit so that left side of the mat's open. Step the left foot forward outside of the left hand. So you're coming into a wide lizard lunge. You might want to tuck the back toes and scoot that back knee back a little bit. You can rest the top of the foot on the mat. That's all up to you. Lengthen the chest forward. Keep the chest up high. Either hands are on blocks or hands are right underneath the shoulders. Up to you. The lower the hands are, the more intense this is. We're using this as an opening hip opener. So just a quick introduction into one. And we'll layer on from here, staying in the hips. Eyes can be softly open. Maybe just look down the bridge of the nose. And that'll help calm the mind, calm the swirl. Listen to the sound of your own breath, keeping the length to it. And in yin, we stay in these poses. They're a lot longer. So it's a longer hold with less effort. If you feel like you're all the way in, see where you can ease up a little bit, make it more gentle. This practice is more about getting into the connective tissues, joints, ligaments. You think about this shape, left foot forward, right leg back. It's almost like a half squat, half yogi squat. So you'll start to push the hips back, bring the left hand outside the left foot, heel toe the left foot inside. So the legs are hip width distance apart. And then we're coming into half splits. So walk the hands. If you have blocks, walk those back too. Lift the left toes. Start to push the heel forward. We're trying to keep that right thigh vertical if we can. And if your knee's bothering you, the right knee, since we've been on it for a while, put some padding there. You can double up your mat, put a towel, whatever you have. And hands can be high, they can be low. The lower they go, the more intense this is. So if you feel like you don't need blocks or you want to lower them, that's something for you to figure out on your own. Same thing with the eyes. They're either half open or even closed if you're comfortable enough. They're open, look down the bridge of the nose. So you feel your eyelids covering half of your eye. You might find as you get more comfortable, the hands come down a little lower. You'll start to shift forward onto the sole of the left foot, walk the hands forward so you're back in your lunge, bring the left knee back underneath you. So we're going to do the same thing on the other side. If you want extra padding for the knees, if you're on a hard surface, just fold the back of the mat in, and then you have double the mat underneath the knees. If you want a smoother transition, grab your blocks, bring them on the tallest height, lifting the chest up, walk them over to the left. So you have plenty of room to step that right foot forward outside of the right hand. Chest is lifted, hands are either down on the mat underneath the shoulders or on the blocks. But keeping this really gentle, this is our first hip opening. It won't be our last. We'll just keep layering on top of this. So don't feel like you need to get as much as you can possibly get out of this. Pretty much with any of these poses, want to give the hips plenty of time. And they need plenty of time. So we know it takes 5 to 8 quality breaths for them to start to open. which is another reason why we stay in these poses for a longer hold so they can have enough time to open, do what they need to do to recover so you can jump back into your day, back into whatever your regular routine is, and feel more comfortable in your body, more at home. Let's start to shift the hips back and heel toe the right foot to the center of the mat. So just enough so the right foot and right hip are right in line with one another. Maybe you lower the blocks, walk the blocks and the hands back, straightening the front leg. Then once you shift the hips back, you might feel like the hips are uneven. So push the right heel forward till it feels like the hips are side by side. And you're coming into half splits just on the other side. So same thing we did on the first side, lengthening the back side of the right leg. Here's where you're trying to play with the height of the chest. It's not really about how low you come. It's about where does the right leg start to open? Just start to open. That's where the height of the chest should be. So you can feel if you go higher or you go lower, it makes it more intense. Try to find a place where you could be there for several minutes without even thinking about it. So even though we're going at a slower pace, you're trying to find what your pace is. And it could be different side to side. So don't feel like you have to be in the same place. You feel like you're making some significant space in the backside of the right leg and you'd like to bring your hands down lower, maybe you do that for the remainder of the pose. Whenever you feel like you've bit off more than you can chew, you lift that chest up higher, you start to back out of it. And slowly start to slide forward onto the sole of the right foot, hands down underneath the shoulders. Bring that right knee back underneath you. And then from here, we'll come to seated. So come to seated on your mat. If you have the mat folded, you can just unroll it, bring it back to its regular length. So we'll come into butterfly pose. You can bring the soles of the feet together, knees wide. If you want to prop the hips up on something, a blanket or a bolster, even a block, you could do that. Maybe have your blocks nearby. That could be a nice thing depending on the height of the head in this. So the closer in the feet are, the more intense this is. The farther away the feet are, the gentler this is. So you want to find something that's in between, not as intense as you can possibly go. Then maybe you shift side to side a couple of times so you feel even on the sit bones. Grab onto the shins, ankles, maybe the inner edges of the feet if they're easy to reach. If they're not, don't struggle to reach them. Sit up as tall as you can. Take a big inhale. On the exhale, start to fold forward. So it's like you're trying to reach the heart forward over the toes. Some of us can get low enough where the elbows can flare out and they can just rest on the legs. The head and the neck can start to come down. And again, you're just going part of the way in. So don't go all the way in. Back off a little bit. You want to be able to fall deeper into the pose over time. And if you come too far in, you won't be able to do that. So less is more. And then if you feel like the head's pretty low, maybe you take a block or two and place that underneath the head. So we know if we rest the forehead on something, it calms the whole body down. And once you calm yourself down, the hips will release even more. So if you have that ability to fill in the space between the head and the floor, go for it. If the head's up high, it's not a big deal. Just close the eyes wherever you are. This is a great one for the inner thigh area, also the hips. And let's start to bring the head back up to seated. If you have anything in front of you, just set it off to the side, clearing your space. Okay, so I'm going to stay facing the side of the mat. You'll want to face the side of the mat too if you're not all ready for this next one. Have the blocks nearby in front of you. Use the hands to bring the knees back together. You're coming to tabletop, but you're facing the side of the mat if you're using a mat. And then once you get to tabletop, what you'll do is fold in the outer edges of the mat like a third of the way on each side. So you have extra padding. And then with the hands down on the ground in front of the mat, just underneath the shoulders, bring the knees to that extra padding. So you're widening the knees. Once you widen the knees enough, you can turn the toes to face to point out. So the inner edges of the feet are down on the ground. And then from here, you can come down lower, which means widening the knees. But remember, this is going to be a longer hold. You definitely don't want to put so much weight on the hips that you can't sustain the shape. So blocks in front of you could be a nice way to bring some comfort to the pose. You could just bring the forearms down onto the blocks and rest here. Maybe they go lower or higher. Some people can get their chest all the way down to the ground and their knees all the way out. I am not that person. I never have been. So you just work with what you've got. And you might find here the body does try to make this easier. And that means the hips start to shift forward or back ahead of the knees or behind the knees. We want them in line with the knees, the hips. Doesn't have to be exactly there. Know that, you can make it gentler if you need to. The goal is finding a place where you can just be without fussing, thinking about it, finding some stillness, and finding some space to surrender in the shape. And this is frog pose. Another deep hip opening, inner thigh opening. And you'll start to make your way back up. So if you're not already, come back up onto the hands. You'll be able to lift the chest a little bit and then start to scoot the knees in inch by inch until you're back to tabletop. Unroll your mat if it's folded. Turn around to face forward. Set the blocks off to the top of the mat. we're coming in a downward facing dog. If you have blocks, let's use the blocks for downward facing dog. So you'll just bring the blocks on the lowest height, the long way in front of you. Blocks are shoulder width distance apart, so pretty wide. You definitely want the entire block to be on the mat. If you're just having the hands on the mat, that's fine too. But heels of the hands come to the back edge of the block, pinkies on the outside, thumb on the inside. So it spreads your hands really wide. Hands and blocks are way out ahead of the shoulders. Tuck the toes, lift the hips up and back, and start to press the heels down into the mat. Hug the belly in. Shoulders are going up toward the hips. So we don't typically do downward facing dog in our yin practice, but we're doing it today more of a as a transition, also a counter for that frog pose. So the inner thighs, if you had a block between the inner thighs, you would be pushing it back behind you. So that's the rotation of the inner thighs. They're spinning back. You want to feel a broadening of the backs of the thighs and some length in the legs. Okay, so bend the knees, look forward to the top of the mat, walk the feet up between the hands, blocks too if you're using them. And then you can set the blocks off to the side, get those out of the way. So feet are hip width distance apart, clasp opposite elbows. This is dangling. It's literally called dangling. The upper body is hanging over the legs. You're trying to shift the weight forward so they're more in the balls of the feet. Heels are a little bit lighter, and all that does is it shifts the hips so they're over the heels, and that gives you more length in the back sides of the legs. As much of a bend as you want in the knees. Give the legs plenty of time to open. If they need a deeper bend, that's fine. If your lower back's bothering you, do a deep bend and rest the chest on the thighs. That's always a good way to give your lower back more support. If your lower back's fine, you can skip that. Maybe notice which forearm's in front. You'll switch it next time we come into this, but there's one way you always want to go. You're probably in it now. Hands come back down in front of you, lifting the chest up halfway. Heel toe the feet wider. So heels in, toes out. We're coming into that yogi squat. Lots of options for this. So hands stay down on the ground in front of you as you bend the knees. Let the hips come down. If the heels stay up, then the hands stay down in front of you. And you just walk the hands forward until you can keep the spine long. So that's the goal there. If the heels can come down, then you can bring the hands together in front of you, elbows inside of the knees, and you open up the knees. So knees and toes always in the same direction. If your toes are pointing out, your knees are pointing out. If your toes are pointing forward, your knees are pointing forward. And that's definitely a deeper squat. So if you feel like that's something you want to play with and narrow the stance, point the toes forward, you're welcome to it. Chest is lifted wherever you are, or at least just the length of the spine. So if the hands are down, then the chest is just going forward instead of up. You can look down the bridge of the nose or maybe even close the eyes. And you might start feeling some heat in the ankles, the feet. They're offering a lot of support. See if you can stick with it. If at any point you need a break, you can come back to that dangling position, the forward fold. Come to your breath. Make sure you can still hear the inhales and the exhales moving up and down the back of the throat. And a block could go underneath the hips. I forgot to mention that. That's always a good alternative. Maybe even 2 blocks, you can stack them. Still a hip opening no matter where you are and what support you're using. Last little bit here. See if you can stick with it. Squats are not the easiest shape for us, especially in the West. We're not used to doing this. It's not part of our culture, but it's such a good shape for the body to be in. It's a great hip opening, great strength building too, in the joints in the lower half of the body. So the more comfortable we can get in a squat, the better. Okay, hands come down, straighten the legs, heel toe the feet back to hip width distance, come back to dangling. So switch the crossing of the forearms, let the head and the neck go. If you want to bend in the knees, find a bend in the knees. If you want to rest the chest on the thighs to support the lower back, that's still an option. Pretty much whenever you're in a forward fold, even if it's seated. Should feel good at this point to have the legs straight. This is a nice release on the back too. You'll bring the hands down to the mat and you'll come to seated. So bend the knees, use the hands to get there, extend the legs out in front of you. And actually, let's come onto our stomach. So bring the feet over to one side, lie down onto your stomach. This will feel really nice to have the legs stretched back behind you, tops of the feet down, forearms down to the mat. We're coming into Sphinx pose. So as you rest the forearms down to the mat, tops of the feet down, hip width distance apart, elbows right underneath the shoulders. Maybe take a look and just make sure they're there. A lot of times what we see is elbows are too far back and you can't lift the chest. So if you get the elbows underneath the shoulders, you can start to lift the chest. Tail goes back toward the heels. Belly hugs in a little bit. So it's not pressing into the mat, it's lifting away from the mat. And then look down the bridge of the nose. So even though you're in a back bend, you still keep the gaze down. When we lift the gaze up, it takes away space from the neck. And this back bend isn't the easiest back bend to be in for a while. So if you need a break, just come on down, lying flat on your stomach, resting the head on top of the hands. You can stack the hands one on top of the other. But maybe today, with this particular sequence, this is feeling good right now. You've got the body going in a different direction than what we've been doing. Keep broadening across the collarbones, widening across the chest. Those bottom tips of the shoulder blades are pushing the chest forward a little bit. Keep the gaze going down the bridge of the nose. Almost done with this one. Take a couple more long inhales and exhales, as long as you can, in and out through the nose. And you'll start to come down onto your stomach, widen the arms, so cactus the arms. Look to the left, bring that left knee out to the left, so toes turning out. So it's just like a half frog shape with the legs. And then you can bring that gaze back down the bridge of the nose, looking down toward the mat. You can maybe turn the head to the right if that feels good in your body, and rest the left side of the head down onto the mat. So this is our counter. You'll feel a gentle twist going up the spine. And you'll start to lift the head up. Bring the left leg back behind you. Switch sides. Right knee comes out to the side. Toes turn out. Inner edge of the foot is down on the ground. Then bring the gaze back to center. Look to the left. If that feels okay on the neck, rest the right side of the head down on the mat. So same thing, other side, countering that back bend. Feeling the twist. And start to lift the head back up. Bring the right leg back behind you. Bring the hands to the mat. Come back up to hands and knees. And then once you get to hands and knees, let's come to child's pose. So you could use a bolster or any props you have. You can come to just a traditional child's pose if you want to, but if you'd like to use a bolster and you have one, just bring it the long way out in front of you. Bring the knees apart so that just the inner knees are touching the very edge of the bolster. In place of the bolster, you could just use a few stacked folded towels. That works too. And then start to come down onto the bolster, and you can turn the head either direction. So maybe to the right or to the left. I'll tell you when we're about halfway through the hold, and you could switch which way you turn the head. But elbows can flare out. Hips can be heavy. They're going down toward the heels. Unless your knees need more space, lift those hips up as high as you need to. And if the hips are high, maybe you just have the forehead down. You could still use the bolster or pillow, whatever you have, blocks. Some version of this shape. If you have the head turned in one direction, lift it, turn it the other way. Start to settle in. You'll start to lift the head up. Coming back up to hands and knees. Let's set any props you have in front of you off to the side. You won't need them. You'll come to seated. And then once you come to seated, soles of the feet on the mat, come on down onto your back. So lie down and then roll over to your right side. So as you roll over to your right side, you can prop the right hand, the head into the right hand, left hand's just right down in front of you. And you'll bring this top leg, the left leg, just bring it straight forward. So maybe it's in front of the hip, maybe the foot's down lower than the hip, just see where it naturally wants to go. And then the bottom leg, the right leg, bend it. So the heel comes in toward the glutes. And then maybe you stay here. Another option, reach back with the left hand, see if the foot and the hand can connect. And that might be too much for the shoulder, maybe the knee. So if it is, then you just let it go and you just keep the foot coming in toward the glute. And we'll take this in stages. So if you're at a stage where you feel like you have enough to chew on, you stay there. Another option, you can take this right arm, bring it forward in front of you, and then roll back like you're coming onto the left shoulder. And then the nose will start to point up, or it could roll over to the left. So this is cat pulling its tail. A lot of people like this pose. What's great about it is there's so many modifications. You can stop whenever you want. You don't have to go all the way in. So find a place where you can be. And we're using this as a twist. If at any point it just seems difficult in any way to hang on to that bottom foot, release it, keep the leg bent if you can, just let the left arm rest. And if you have that bottom foot, gently start to release it, extending the right leg forward. Bring the left arm all the way over on top of the right arm. Prop the head up onto the right hand. Bring that left leg back behind you so the legs are stacked. And then you'll switch sides. So you can come onto your stomach, roll over to the other side. So you're lying on the left side of the body. Prop the head up into the hand. So left hand supporting the head, right hand just down in front of you. Then as you're staying on the left side of the body, bring that right leg forward. That's the top leg, maybe foot in line with the hip or lower. Find something that's working for you. Stay here. Now we'll play with the bottom leg. So bend that bottom knee. See how far in you can bring the foot without too much effort, but get it close to the glutes. Reach back with the right hand if you want to. See if the foot and the hand connect. And then just stay here. See how this feels. Make sure your right shoulder is okay with it. And if you want to go deeper, left arm reaches out in front of you. Start to roll back onto the shoulders. Maybe the gaze goes over the right shoulder. Cat pulling its tail. You'll start to bring the head back to center. Release that bottom foot if you have it. Start to extend the leg. Bring that right arm over. Prop the head up onto the left hand. Right hand down in front of you. Bring the right leg to step on top of the left leg. So you're still lying on the left side of the body. Come onto your back. Rest the head onto the mat. Get the hips center on the mat. Reach the arms overhead. Extend the legs out in front of you. So you're just finding a long stretch on the mat. You can start to relax the legs. Feet are a little bit wider than hip width distance apart. Clasp opposite elbows overhead. Staying on your back, arms are just resting overhead with the elbows clasped. Take the right foot, stack it on top of the left foot. So you're crossing the legs at the ankles, keeping the legs straight, but you can let go of the legs. They're not going to go anywhere. The feet are hooked. Lift the upper body up, bring it slightly over to the left, just so you find a banana shape in the body. Make sure both hips are down, both shoulder blades are down on the mat, completely touching. Heads on the mat, close the eyes, and start to feel all that length you're creating on the right side of the body. Lift the upper body up, bring it back to center. Uncross the feet. Hook the left foot on top of the right foot. Reach the arms overhead, find a stretch, and then clasp opposite elbows the other way. So you're bringing the other forearm on top. Lift the upper body up and over to the right. Set it all back down. Make sure both shoulder blades are even, both hips are even. You just have a slight arc in the body, so it's not extreme. And then once you have the elbows clasped and the feet hooked, see where you can let go. Where can you ease up? The body isn't going to go anywhere. Trying to find less effort wherever we can. Eyes can remain closed. See if you can just set it and forget it. Then lift the upper body up, bring it back to center. Uncross the feet. Stretch the arms overhead. Take a big inhale. Exhale the arms down by the sides. Let the backs of the hands just rest down beside the body, but give yourself some space so you're not touching the body with the hands. Lift the chest up, get the shoulder blades underneath you. Maybe lift the head up just to get some space in the backside of the neck. Toes turn out, and you're in Shavasana, final relaxation pose. No props. However, if you feel like you need something underneath the head to lengthen the backside of the neck, then bring something underneath the head. Some of us can't lie flat on the ground, and that's fine. We just need a little bit of support. And if anything else is going on in your body and you feel like you need to soften things up somewhere, take a moment to do that. This is corpse pose. So this is a time where we let go of the breath and we let go of the body. You find a disconnect here, being the freest version of yourself. You'll start to wiggle the fingers and the toes. Stretch the arms overhead, waking up again. Walk the feet in, bend the knees, and then roll over to your right side. Cradle the head on the arm. See if that's comfortable. If it's not, you can always go the other way or stay on your back. Using the hands, bring yourself up to a comfortable seat with or without props. Sitting up as tall as you can. Bringing the hands together in front of you. Slight bow of the head. Maintain the lift of the chest. Take a moment to yourself. Honor and acknowledge your heart and spirit, as well as everyone around you. Bring the head back up. Blink open the eyes. Namaste. Thanks so much for joining me for yin today. That was a lot of hip opening, but definitely full body. Hope you feel great. Enjoy the rest of your day or evening.